On the morning of October 12, 1944, in a sky 28,000 feet above a German lake most Americans have never heard of, a 21-year-old boy from the coal hollows of West Virginia is about to do something that should not be possible. He is alone. His canopy is fogging at the edges where the heater can't reach. His oxygen mask smells like rubber and sweat. His left hand rests on a throttle his grandfather would have called witchcraft. Below him, climbing slowly out of the cirrus in a long line, are 22 Messerschmitt Bf 109s. He counts them twice. The number does not change. His name is Charles Elwood Yeager. 7 months ago he was lying in the straw of a French farmer's barn, hiding from the Gestapo. 6 weeks ago, by every rule the United States Army Air Forces had written down on paper, he was not supposed to ever sit in this cockpit again. He is here because Dwight Eisenhower changed his mind. He pushes the stick forward. Hold that image, 21 years old. Alone, diving, because to understand what happens in the next 15 minutes, you have to go backwards, 4 years backwards. To a hangar in California where a German immigrant draws a fighter no one has asked for, and further back than that? To a sky over Germany where the United States 8th Air Force is being slaughtered in numbers no one in Washington wants to put on paper. The 8th Air Force is dying, not metaphorically, mathematically. On October 14, 1943, 291 B-17 Flying Fortresses lift off from airfields across East Anglia. Their target is the ball-bearing factories at Schweinfurt, deep inside the Reich. Ball bearings turn the wheels of tanks, they turn the gears of submarines. They turn the engines of the entire German war machine, destroy them, and you cripple the Wehrmacht. That is the theory. The practice is this: 60 bombers do not come home. 600 American airmen are dead, captured, or missing by sundown. In the briefing huts at Bassingbourn and Thurley, men stop eating breakfast, they throw up before missions, they write letters home and seal them and leave them on their bunks. The numbers are unforgiving. A bomber crew is supposed to fly 25 missions before they rotate home. At October's loss rates, the odds of completing 25 sit somewhere near 1 in 4. The reason is range. American doctrine had insisted the bombers could defend themselves. 18 B-17s in a combat box carried 180 50 caliber machine guns and overlapping fields of fire. The math said no fighter could survive the lead curtain. The Luftwaffe broke the math in 6 months. The bombers needed escorts. The P-47 Thunderbolt was a magnificent fighter, heavy, fast, brutal, but its radial engine drank fuel like a horse drinks at a trough. With drop tanks, the Thunderbolt could reach the German border, and then it had to turn for home. The bombers continued alone. The Germans called the zone past escort range the death zone. They waited there every morning. They knew exactly where the Americans would abandon their bombers, and they timed their attacks for that moment. By December of 1943, planners in Washington and London were doing math no one wanted to do. At current rates, the 8th Air Force would cease to exist as a fighting force by July of 1944. D-Day was scheduled for June. There was no margin, there was no time, there was no fighter in the inventory that could escort the bombers to Berlin and back. There was, however, a fighter no one wanted. Travel back to the spring of 1940. Inglewood, California. A man named Edgar Schmude stands in a hangar at North American Aviation. He is 40 years old. He was born in a small town in Germany. He spent 5 years in Brazil as an automotive engineer before sailing to California in 1930. He is not yet an American citizen. The paperwork will not come through until 1942. The British Purchasing Commission has come to him with a problem and a stopwatch. The Royal Air Force needs fighters, badly. They have asked North American to build Curtiss P-40 Warhawks under license. Schmude's boss, James Kindleberger, has made the British a different offer. We will not build you someone else's fighter, we will build you a better one. From scratch. The British ask how long. Kindleberger answers without consulting his designer. He says 120 days. Schmude does not flinch. He goes back to his drafting table. 117 days later, an aircraft called the NA-73X rolls out into the California sun. It has a predatory shape that does not look like anything else flying. The wings are different, the fuselage is different, the radiator is mounted in a strange place far back behind the pilot. Schmude has bet everything on something called a laminar flow wing. The theory is that if you shape the wing precisely enough, the air will slide across it without churning. No turbulence, no drag, just speed. On October 26, 1940, the NA-73X takes off for the first time. It is fast. It is also, in one important way, useless. The aircraft they will eventually call the Mustang has, in this first version, an American engine. An Allison V1710. At sea level, the Allison is a fine engine. It is sturdy, it is reliable, it produces good power. Above 15,000 feet, the Allison gasps. The supercharger is single stage. It cannot pull enough air at altitude to feed the cylinders. Power drops off a cliff. By 20,000 feet, the Mustang is sluggish. By 25,000, it is a brick. The British discover this in early 1942. They take their new Mustangs, they fly them at the altitudes where the German fighters live, and they discover that the Germans do not even bother to engage. The Mustang cannot climb to where the Messerschmitts are. It cannot pursue them when they dive away. It cannot do the one job a fighter exists to do. The RF makes a decision. The Mustang, with its beautiful laminar wing and its disappointing engine, is reassigned. It will not be a fighter. It will be a low-altitude reconnaissance aircraft. It will fly along hedgerows at 500 feet and photograph German positions. It will strafe trucks. It will support the army. In the American press, the news is reported with quiet satisfaction. The British have wasted American steel on a failure. The men who built the Mustang read the papers. Edgar Schmude reads the papers. He does not say much, he goes back to work. The man who saves the Mustang is a 32-year-old test pilot named Ronald Harker. Harker works for Rolls-Royce. He has flown almost everything that has wings. On April 30th, 1942, he is invited by the Air Fighting Development Unit at Duxford to take a Mustang up and tell them what he thinks. He takes off, he climbs, he puts the aircraft through its paces, he lands, then he writes the report that changes the war. He says the Mustang is the most beautifully designed fighter he has ever flown. He says the airframe is extraordinary. He says the laminar wing is a revolution. He says the controls are perfectly harmonized. Then he says the engine is wrong. He proposes something audacious. He proposes they take the Mustang's airframe and marry it to the Rolls-Royce Merlin 61. The Merlin is the engine that powers the Spitfire. It is the engine that powers the Lancaster bomber. It has a two-stage, two-speed supercharger that breathes thin air the way fish breathe water. At 30,000 feet, the Merlin still pulls. The marriage should not work. The Merlin is heavier. It changes the center of gravity. It requires a different cooling system, a different propeller, a different intake. Engineers on both sides of the Atlantic argue. Some say it is impossible. Some say it is a waste of two good designs. Rolls-Royce builds 5 prototypes anyway. The first one flies on October 13, 1942. The numbers come back from the test flight, and the engineers sit looking at them for a long time. Top speed at 23,000 feet, 441 miles per hour, faster than anything the Germans have, faster than the Spitfire. Faster than any Allied fighter in service, combat ceiling above 40,000 feet, range with internal fuel and 2 drop tanks. 1,200 miles. Berlin is 600 miles from London. The math suddenly works. By the autumn of 1943, the Packard Motor Car Company in Detroit is mass-producing the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine under license. They build it in volumes the British factories cannot match, tens of thousands of engines. They feed them into the new P-51B and P-51C airframes coming off the North American line in Inglewood. The aircraft once dismissed as a failure is now being built faster than any other American fighter, and it needs pilots. In a town called Hamlin, West Virginia, a young man is reading the news. He is 18 years old. His name is Charles Elwood Yeager. He is the second son of Albert Hal Yeager, a man who drills natural gas wells in the hills for a living, and Susie May Yeager, a woman who feeds 5 children on a stretched dollar. Chuck Yeager has never been on an airplane. He has, however, been hunting in the hills since he was 6 years old. He can shoot a squirrel out of a chestnut tree at 40 yards with a single .22 caliber round and not damage the meat. He has eyes the army doctors will eventually measure at 2010. He can see further than ordinary men. He notices things ordinary men do not notice. In September of 1941, 3 months before Pearl Harbor, he walks into a recruiting office and enlists in the United States Army Air Corps. Not as a pilot. He has not finished high school. The pilot program will not take him. He enlists as an aircraft mechanic. He spends the first year of the war taking engines apart and putting them back together. He is good at it. He has been good at it since he was 12 and his father handed him a wrench. He works on AT-6 Texans. He works on P-39 Airacobras. He learns the sound a tired bearing makes. He learns the smell of a fuel leak before he can see it. Then, in July of 1942, the Army Air Forces does something out of desperation. They need pilots faster than the universities can produce officers. They open the cockpits to enlisted men. They call it the Flying Sergeants Program. To qualify, a candidate needs only a high school equivalency and a passing score on a battery of tests. Yeager takes the tests in a sweltering Quonset hut in Nevada. He passes. He sits in a fighter cockpit for the first time in March of 1943. He is 20 years old. He has never been more than 200 miles from West Virginia. The instructor straps him in, slaps the canopy shut, and walks away. The Mustang has not yet reached him. He is still flying Curtiss P-40s and Bell P-39s. The aircraft that will define his life is still rolling out of the factory in California. But the Mustang is coming for him, and in a few months, on a runway in Suffolk, England, in the wet grey morning of an English winter, the boy from Hamlin and the airplane built in 117 days are going to meet for the first time. Neither of them is what anyone expected. Neither of them is finished being shaped. The war has not yet decided what they are going to be. The boy from Hamlin steps off the troopship Queen Elizabeth at Greenock on the west coast of Scotland on November 29, 1943. He is 20 years old. He has been at sea for 10 days. He has crossed a U-boat-infested ocean in a converted ocean liner, painted grey and packed shoulder to shoulder with 15,000 other men. He has not slept well since New York. England in late November smells like wet wool and coal smoke. The trains run blacked out. The country has been at war for 4 years and 3 months. Yeager and the rest of the replacement pilots are loaded onto a train heading east. The train moves through landscape his West Virginia eyes have never seen. Flat fields, hedgerows, church steeples poking out of villages that have been there since before America was a country. Bomb craters in some of those villages, the kind that cannot be filled in because no one has the time. He gets off the train at a station called Saxmundham. Trucks meet the pilots. They drive about 6 miles east along narrow country lanes, hedges scraping the canvas of the troop bed. The air smells of the North Sea now, salt, cold. They turn off the road and pass a wooden guardhouse with a corporal stamping his feet against the cold. Royal Air Force Station Leiston, Suffolk, the home as of this month of the United States Army Air Force's 357th Fighter Group. Yeager climbs out of the truck. There, in a line along the grass strip, sit 24 P-51B Mustangs. He has never seen one in person. He walks down the row in the dim winter light. The aircraft are painted olive drab on top and neutral grey on the bottom. White nose markings, white stripes around the wings and fuselage. The cowlings are long and predatory. The four-bladed propellers stand still, waiting. The Mustangs sit lower to the ground than the Bell Airacobras he trained on, sleeker, hungrier. A crew chief leans against the wing of one of them, smoking a Lucky Strike. He sees Yeager looking at the aircraft and says nothing. He has seen 100 new pilots arrive. Some of them will not be here in 6 weeks. Yeager touches the wing with his bare hand. The metal is cold. He will later say he knew in that moment that this was the airplane. The 357th Fighter Group has not yet flown a single combat mission. It is one of the first 3 American fighter groups in Europe to be equipped from the start with Mustangs. The 354th has already taken the type into combat in early December. The 357th will follow in February. The pilots have weeks to train. Weeks to learn the aircraft. Weeks to learn each other. Yeager is assigned to Sea Flight 363rd Fighter Squadron. The man who will fly off his wing for almost every combat mission of his war is a 21-year-old California farm boy named Clarence Anderson. Everyone calls him Bud. Anderson is from a town called Newcastle in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. His father raises citrus. Anderson learned to fly at the Sacramento airport before the war. He is quieter than Yeager. He laughs at the same things. He drinks coffee black. He has the careful, measured way of a man who has done dangerous work for a long time, even though he has barely turned 21. They become friends almost immediately. They share a hut, they share a bicycle, they fly together in the air, and on the ground they walk together to chow. The bond between a fighter pilot and his wingman is not a friendship in the ordinary sense. It is a covenant. The wingman protects the leader's tail. The leader makes the kills. If the leader dies, the wingman has failed. If the wingman dies, the leader spends the rest of his life knowing he watched it happen. Yeager and Anderson will fly together for the entire war. Neither of them, in the end, will lose the other. Yeager paints a name on the nose of his Mustang in the first week of January 1944. He has met a girl. Her name is Glennis Faye Dickhouse. She is 20 years old, fair-haired, from Oroville, California. He met her during stateside training in Nevada. She is the prettiest woman he has ever spoken to. He has decided he is going to marry her when the war is over. He paints, in cursive script across the cowling, the words Glamorous Glennis. The letters tilt slightly forward as if leaning into a wind. Every Mustang he flies in combat will carry her name. There will be 6 of them before this war is over. Every fighter pilot has a superstition. This is his. The first combat mission flies on February 11, 1944. The Luftwaffe does not come up. The Mustangs return to Leiston with their guns cold. Yeager flies 7 more missions through February and into early March. He sees fighters in the distance. He fires a few rounds at extreme range without effect. He learns the procedures. He learns the radio discipline. He drops a wing tank over the channel by accident. He is alive. He is, in the slang of his squadron, still green. The veterans tell the new pilots the same things they have been telling new pilots since 1914. Check your 6. Do not fly straight and level for more than 10 seconds. If your engine quits, dive for cloud. If you are on fire, get out. If you cannot get out, aim for trees. Yeager listens, he takes notes, he flies, he waits. On March 4, 1944, he gets his first confirmed kill. A Messerschmitt 109 over central Germany. He pulls behind it, he fires for 3 seconds. The 109 burns. The pilot does not bail out. He is 21 years old. He has just killed a man. He does not talk about it that night in the mess. There are no toasts. The veterans nod at him as he walks past. That is the only acknowledgement that is needed. The next morning, on March 5, 1944, the war finishes finding him. The mission is a bomber escort to Bordeaux. Long range. Deep into occupied France, the Mustangs lift off in the dark, climb through cloud, and break into clean morning sky over the channel at 20,000 feet. Yeager is flying Glamorous Glennis. Bud Anderson is on his wing. About an hour and a half into the mission, somewhere south of Limoges, Yeager looks up and to the right. He sees 3 dots descending out of the sun. He is the first man in his squadron to see them. The dots become silhouettes, Focke-Wulf 190s, short stubby noses, wide wings, the German radial engine fighter that Mustang pilots respect more than any other. He calls them out on the radio. He banks hard right to climb into the attack. He never hears the second pair come in behind him. The first he knows of it, the airframe shudders, a hammering, screaming sound from behind his head, cannon shells punching through aluminum. His instrument panel disintegrates. Glycol from the radiator sprays the windscreen white. The engine begins to seize. The throttle in his left hand goes dead. A Focke-Wulf has come up his tail at 600 feet per second. The Mustang is on fire. Yeager pulls the canopy release. The slipstream tears it away. He releases his harness. He pushes himself up out of the cockpit, and gravity does the rest. He falls. He pulls the ripcord. The parachute opens above the wooded hills of the Lot-et-Garonne in southwestern France. He hangs in the silence, dropping toward the trees. Bud Anderson is somewhere above him, circling, watching. There is nothing Anderson can do for him now. He waits until the parachute disappears into the canopy of pines, and then he turns for home. Anderson will later write that he watched the parachute drop into the forest, and he was certain he had just seen his friend killed. Yeager hits the ground harder than he expected. His head strikes a tree on the way down. His leg gashes open below the knee. He sits in the wet leaves with blood running into his boot. The German aircraft are gone. There is no sound now except the wind in the pines and his own breathing. He gets up. He starts walking. He has been on the ground in occupied France for less than 10 minutes when he hears voices. Men coming through the forest. He does not know yet if they are French or German. They are French. They are a small unit of the Maquis. The rural resistance fighters of southwestern France. 3 men. They are armed with old hunting rifles and 1 British Sten gun dropped by parachute 3 months earlier. The leader is a man in his 30s with a beard and a wool cap. He speaks no English. Yeager speaks no French. They look at his uniform. They look at his bloody leg. They lower their weapons. He is bundled into a farmhouse 2 miles away. A woman cleans the wound on his leg with whiskey poured from a clay jug. They give him bread, hard cheese, and a glass of red wine that tastes nothing like anything from West Virginia. He sleeps that night in a hayloft. He will spend the next 4 weeks moving from farmhouse to farmhouse, village to village. The Maquis are not soldiers. They are bakers and woodcutters and railway workers. They are men and women who have decided, at the cost of their lives, that they will not be quiet under German occupation. They feed down Allied airmen. They hide them. They move them, 1 safe house at a time, towards Spain. Yeager makes himself useful. He has spent 2 years as an aircraft mechanic. He understands fuses, primers, and timers. The Maquis are receiving British explosives by parachute drop, and they are not always sure how to use them. Yeager teaches them. He shows them how to set delay fuses on detonators, how to wire a charge to derail a freight train, how to bring down a telegraph pole with a ½ pound of plastic explosive. The Maquis fight a different war than he does. He is in their world now. He learns it. He turns 21 in a farmer's hayloft. There is no cake. There is bread and wine and the sound of a German patrol passing on the road 100 yards away in the night. On the night of March 23, 1944, Yeager and 3 other downed airmen are taken to the foothills of the Pyrenees. The plan is to cross the mountains into Spain. Spain is technically neutral. In practice, Spain leans toward Germany. American airmen who reach Spain are not shot. They are interned. They are eventually allowed to return to England. It is the only way home that does not run through a German prisoner of war camp. The crossing is done on foot, in March, in the snow. Yeager is in the strongest physical condition of the 4 men. The others are a bombardier named Omar Patterson, who took shrapnel during his bailout, and 2 airmen whose names are no longer remembered in the records. They climb for 3 days. The temperatures at altitude drop to 10 below zero. Their guide is a Basque smuggler who has done this route a dozen times, and who will within the year be shot to death by a German patrol. On the 3rd night, near a stone shepherd's hut at the crest of the range, a German patrol detects them. A burst of machine gun fire comes out of the dark. Yeager hears the rounds whip past his head. Patterson takes a round in the right knee. The leg is destroyed. Below the knee, the bones are pulverized. Patterson is screaming. The 2 other airmen have already vanished into the trees. Yeager makes a choice. He grabs Patterson under the arms. He drags him. He drags him through the snow, down the south slope of the mountain. For 4 hours, Patterson loses consciousness. Patterson regains consciousness. Patterson begs Yeager to leave him. Yeager does not leave him. They reach Spanish territory at dawn. Patterson is alive. The leg is not. Spanish farmers find them. Patterson will lose the leg below the knee in a hospital in Pamplona. He will go home to the United States and live to be an old man. Yeager will not speak much about that night for the rest of his life. When he does, in the autobiography he writes 40 years later, he says only this. He says, "I would have done the same for him. He would have done the same for me." That was the deal. The Spanish authorities picked them up the next afternoon. Yeager spends 6 weeks in an internment hotel in the town of Alhama de Aragon. He plays cards. He learns to roll Spanish cigarettes. He waits. In May 1944, the American consulate arranges his release through Gibraltar. He boards a transport. He flies to Casablanca. He flies to England. On May 15, 1944, he walks back through the gate of Rathleiston, but Anderson is the first man he sees. Anderson stops in the middle of the road. He stares for a full 10 seconds without speaking. Then he walks over and embraces him. That is, by Anderson's later account, the only time either of them ever embraced anyone during the entire war. The next morning, Yeager is told he is going home. By regulation, he cannot fly combat over Europe again. The reason is straightforward and brutal. A pilot who has been helped by the resistance knows the names of the resistance. He knows the farmhouses. He knows the routes. If he is shot down a second time and captured, the Gestapo will eventually break him. Every man does eventually, and when he breaks, dozens of French civilians will die. The rule is firm. Escapees do not return to combat. They go home and train new pilots. Yeager is told this in a small office by a major who has clearly delivered the news before. The major tells him he should be proud. He survived. He helped a wounded man across the mountains. He has done his part. He will be a stateside instructor. He will live. Yeager looks at the major across the desk. He says, "Sir, with respect, I am not going home." It takes him almost 2 months to find a man who will listen. He goes through his squadron commander. He goes through the group commander. He goes through the wing. Every officer tells him the same thing. The rule is the rule. Then he learns that another escaped pilot from another group, a captain named Fred Glover, has filed the same appeal. They join forces. They write a joint letter. They make an unusual request. They ask to be heard by the Supreme Allied Commander. The request is, by any reasonable measure, absurd. A flight officer and a captain asking to take up the personal time of the man planning the invasion of Europe. But the timing is strange. D-Day has just occurred on June 6. The breakout from the Normandy beaches is bogging down in the hedgerows. The Allied armies are inching south. Every German division pulled away from that front is a German division held in place by the French resistance. The resistance Eisenhower's armies are now depending upon. The case Yeager and Glover make is simple. The rule was written when France was wholly occupied. It is now July. Half of France is being liberated weekly. Within months, the rule will be irrelevant because there will be no occupied France left for them to be shot down over a second time. Their case is logical. It is also presumptuous. In early July of 1944, they are escorted to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force at Bushy Park, southwest of London. They are made to wait 3 hours. Then they are shown into an office where Dwight David Eisenhower, 53 years old, Supreme Commander of all Allied forces in Europe, sits behind a desk and looks at them. He listens. He asks 2 questions. He asks them how many other escaped pilots are in their situation. They tell him several dozen. He asks them if they understand what is at stake if they are shot down again. They tell him they understand. Eisenhower thinks for a moment. He tells them he cannot make a decision today. He tells them to come back when Paris has fallen. Paris falls on August 25, 1944. 2 days later, the order comes through. Charles E. Yeager and Frederick W. Glover are returned to combat status, effective immediately. They become the first official exceptions to the escape and evasion rule, and they open the door for some 40 more pilots after them. Yeager flies his first mission back at the end of August. For the next 6 weeks, he flies escort, he flies bomber support, he flies fighter sweeps. He picks up 2 more confirmed kills. He flies in formations of 40 Mustangs, cruising at 25,000 feet across the German border. He sees Luftwaffe fighters disengage rather than fight. He sees them lose their willingness. He is no longer a new pilot. He is 21 years old. He has been at this for almost a year. Bud Anderson flies on his wing. They drink in the same pub on stand-down nights. They write letters home. Yeager writes to Glennis in California. They eat the same bad mess hall food. They are, by autumn 1944, the closest thing to brothers either of them has ever had. On the morning of October 12, 1944, the squadron is briefed for a long mission. Escort the heavy bombers of the 1st Air Division to Bremen, industrial targets, submarine pens, the works. The Mustangs lift off at first light. They cross the North Sea at 20,000 feet. They pick up the bombers near the Dutch coast. They climb to 28,000 and they cross into Germany. About an hour into the mission, near a lake in northern Germany called Steinhuder See, Yeager sees them first. His 2010 eyes have always been an advantage. A German formation below and ahead, climbing into a position to attack the bombers. He counts 22 Bf-109s. He calls them out on the radio. His squadron orders him to engage. Bud Anderson is for once not on his wing. Anderson is on the far side of the formation with another flight. Yeager pushes the throttle. He noses over. He drops alone into a sky containing 22 German fighters. What happens in the next 60 seconds, no one quite believes when he reports it on the ground. The lead Bf-109 sees him coming, so does the wingman. They both panic at the same instant. They both brake in the same direction. They collide. In mid-air, wingtips first, then fuselage against fuselage, then both aircraft lock together, on fire, spinning, falling. Yeager has not fired a single round. He has destroyed 2 enemy fighters. The remaining 20 Bf-109s scatter, and Chuck Yeager, 21 years old, from a hollow in West Virginia, alone in a sky he was not supposed to be in, levels his Mustang and begins to hunt. 3 more 109s remain in his immediate sky. The other 17 are diving for the deck, trying to disengage, trying to live. Yeager picks one. He pulls behind it at 400 miles per hour. The German pilot is good. He brakes left. Yeager follows. The 109 reverses. Yeager reverses with it. The fight goes vertical. Speed bleeds. The Mustang has more energy than the Messerschmitt. It always does at this altitude. The 109 stalls first. For 3 seconds the German aircraft hangs in the air like a fly on a window. Yeager fires. 6 50 caliber Brownings open up in the wings of the Mustang. The recoil shakes the airframe. Hot brass spills out of the wing belly. Tracers converge on the 109. The German fighter comes apart at the canopy. The fuselage rolls inverted and falls. That is 3. He spots the 4th one trying to slip away under him. Yeager rolls inverted, pulls through, and chases the 109 down to 10,000 feet. The German engine cannot match the Merlin in the dive. The 109 has nowhere left to go. Yeager fires from 200 yards. The Messerschmitt explodes. That is 4. The 5th one he finds climbing back up. A lone Bf-109 trying to slip away east, alone in a wide piece of sky. Yeager closes the distance over 3 minutes. He fires from 100 yards. The German pilot bails out. The aircraft falls. That is 5. In approximately 15 minutes, Chuck Yeager has destroyed 5 enemy fighters and survived. He turns for home. He lands at Leiston with the sun low in the western sky. The crew chief counts the spent rounds, roughly 300 fired. Gun camera footage will confirm each kill. He is by USAF designation an ace in a day. He is one of only 4 pilots in the entire 8th Air Force to ever achieve it. He does not, by his own later admission, feel like a hero. He feels tired. He feels like he wants a hot bath. He feels lucky to be alive. That night in the officers' bar, Bud Anderson buys the drinks. Yeager has 1 beer. Then he goes to bed. By November of 1944, Adolf Hitler has decided the war can still be won with miracle weapons. The V-1 cruise missile, the V-2 ballistic missile, and the world's first operational jet fighter, the Messerschmitt 262. It is a beautiful machine. Swept wings, 2 turbojets slung under the wings. It can outrun any Allied fighter by 100 miles per hour. It carries 4 30mm cannons. 1 burst is enough to bring down a B-17, but the Me-262 has weaknesses, and the men who fly Mustangs learn them quickly. The jet engines are unreliable. They burn for 40 hours and have to be rebuilt. They cannot tolerate rapid throttle changes. They cannot be slowed easily for landing. The aircraft must approach the runway in a long, low, predictable glide, and during that glide it is the most vulnerable airplane in the German Air Force. A unit called Kommando Nowotny is formed in September 1944. It is the first operational jet squadron in history. It is based at twin airfields called Achme and Hesepe in northwestern Germany. The commander is a 23-year-old Austrian named Walter Nowotny. He has 258 confirmed kills, mostly on the Eastern Front against Soviet aircraft. He is one of the most decorated pilots in the Reich. The Mustang groups in England learn the location of Achme within weeks. They begin patrolling above it. On November 6, 1944, Yeager is flying a routine sweep when he spots one of them. A Me-262 below him, descending toward Achme. The jet is in its landing approach, gear coming down, flaps extending. Speed bleeding to 200 knots. For 30 seconds, the most advanced fighter in the world is slower than the Mustang above it. Yeager dives. He comes down out of the sun at 450 miles per hour. The German pilot does not see him until Yeager is 200 yards behind. By then, it is too late to push the throttles forward. The jet engines need 10 seconds to spool. Yeager has 3. He fires. The Mustang's 50 calibers strike the right engine of the Me-262. Pieces of nacelle peel off. The jet rolls. The pilot makes the field. Yeager strafes the aircraft on the ground for good measure. It is one of the earliest air-to-air victories of a propeller fighter against a jet in the history of aerial warfare. 2 days later, on November 8, 1944, Walter Nowotny lifts off from Acme in his own Me-262 to intercept American bombers. He claims 1 kill. Then his aircraft suffers an engine failure during the engagement. He attempts to make it back to Acme. A Mustang catches him. Walter Nowotny, 23 years old, one of the most decorated pilots of the Reich, dies in a field 2 miles short of his own runway. Commando Nowotny is disbanded within the week. The jet age has arrived and the Reich cannot hold it. Yeager flies his last combat mission in January 1945. He has accumulated, by the time the squadron records are closed, 11.5 confirmed aerial victories. The half is a kill shared with another pilot who fired into the same aircraft. He is not the highest scoring Mustang ace. That title belongs to George Earl Preddy of the 352nd Fighter Group, who shot down 26 and 83/100ths German aircraft before he was killed by friendly anti-aircraft fire on Christmas Day 1944. He was 25 years old. Yeager is not even the highest scoring pilot in his own squadron. Bud Anderson finishes the war with 16.25 confirmed kills. Chuck Yeager is by these numbers a solid ace, not yet a legend. The legend comes later. He returns to the United States in February 1945. He marries Glennis Faye Dickhouse on February 26 of that year in the Methodist Church in Hamlin, West Virginia. They will be married for 45 years until her death. The Army Air Forces, surveying his record, makes a decision. Yeager has flown more types of aircraft than almost any pilot of his age. He has flown them in conditions of extreme stress. He has eyes that see further than anyone else's. He has hands that learn to read engines before he learned to read books. He is unflappable in cockpits where other men panic. They assign him to flight test work, first at Wright Field in Ohio, then at the new Muroc Army Airfield in the high desert of California. It will later be renamed Edwards Air Force Base. For 2 years he flies experimental aircraft. He flies prototypes that kill other test pilots. He survives them. By 1947, he is one of 50 pilots in the world being considered for the Bell X-1 program. The Bell X-1 is in some ways less an airplane than a bullet with wings. It is small, it is painted orange. It is shaped like a 50 caliber round, because the engineers know 50 caliber rounds remain stable at supersonic speeds. It is powered by a rocket engine. It carries enough fuel for 2.5 minutes of powered flight. It is designed to do something nobody is certain is even possible. It is designed to fly faster than the speed of sound. The barrier the engineers cannot see is not made of glass or steel. It is made of compressed air. As an aircraft approaches the speed of sound, shock waves form around the wings. The controls go strange. Some aircraft lock up, others tear themselves apart. The British have already lost one of their best men, Geoffrey de Havilland Jr. Chasing it. His aircraft came apart in mid-air over the Thames estuary. Chuck Yeager is 24 years old when he is selected to try. The flight is scheduled for October 14, 1947. 2 nights before the flight, Yeager and Glennis go out to a small restaurant. After dinner, they ride horses in the desert. The night is clear. The horses know the trail. On the way back to the stables in the dark, Yeager's horse spooks at a gate that has been left swinging open. Yeager goes over the saddle. He hits the ground hard. He breaks 2 ribs on his right side. He cannot tell the Air Force flight surgeon. If he tells the flight surgeon, the surgeon will ground him. If he is grounded, another pilot will fly the X-1. He will not get a second chance. He drives himself in the dark to a civilian doctor in the nearest town. The doctor wraps his ribs with tape and tells him not to lift anything heavy for 2 weeks. The next morning, Yeager walks into the hangar at Muroc and tells one man. The man's name is Jack Ridley. He is 32 years old. He is Yeager's flight engineer on the X-1 program. He is from Oklahoma, soft-spoken, with a master's degree from the California Institute of Technology and the calm temperament of a man who has spent his life solving problems. Yeager shows him the ribs. Ridley looks at him a long time. Then Ridley says, "We need to figure out how you're going to close that door." The hatch of the Bell X-1 is the side door of the cockpit. It has to be pulled shut from inside against the slipstream with a hard two-handed motion. With two cracked ribs on his right side, Yeager cannot generate the force. Ridley walks across the hangar and finds a broom. He breaks 10 inches off the handle. He hands the piece of broomstick to Yeager. He says, "Use this as a lever." The door will close. That is all. No memo, no paperwork, no conversation about whether it is wise. On the morning of October 14th, 1947, a B-29 mothership lifts off from Muroc, carrying a small orange aircraft slung beneath its bomb bay. Painted on the nose in cursive letters tilting forward are the words "Glamorous Glennis." At 25,000 feet, Yeager climbs down through the bomb bay of the B-29 into the X-1. The wind in the bay is 180 miles per hour. The temperature is 30 below zero. He settles into the cockpit. He looks up. Jack Ridley is at the rim of the bomb bay watching him. Yeager pulls the hatch against his good shoulder. He slides the broomstick into the latch handle. He levers it closed. Ridley nods. Yeager nods back. Ridley climbs out. The X-1 drops away from the B-29 at 20,000 feet. Yeager ignites the 4 chambers of the rocket engine. The acceleration pins him into the seat. The X-1 climbs at a 45-degree angle. The airspeed needle sweeps right. At 43,000 feet, he levels off. The needle reaches Mach 0.94, 0.96, 0.98. The controls go strange. The shock waves are forming. Then, at approximately 10:30 in the morning, the needle hesitates and jumps. On the ground at Muroc, observers hear a sound none of them have ever heard before, a deep double crack rolling across the desert from the sky overhead. Like distant artillery on a still day, it is the first sonic boom ever generated by a human being. Inside the X-1, Chuck Yeager is flying faster than sound. He holds Mach 1.06 for 20 seconds. Then he shuts the engine down and glides back to Earth. He lands on the dry lake bed at Muroc with his ribs aching. Ground crew runs out to meet the aircraft. Yeager climbs down. He walks across the lake bed alone for a moment, looking back at the small orange shape that has just rewritten what a human being can do. The Air Force classifies the achievement. It will not be announced to the public for 9 months. Chuck Yeager will live another 73 years. He will continue flying. He will fly combat again in Vietnam. He will become a brigadier general. He will retire. He will be played by Sam Shepard in The Right Stuff. He will die in Los Angeles on December 7th, 2020, at the age of 97. The anniversary, by coincidence, of Pearl Harbor. His official war record was 11.5 kills. He never claimed more. The P-51 Mustang, the aircraft they once called a failure, became the most decorated American fighter of the European War. It flew through Korea. It served with the Dominican Air Force until 1984. 44 years after its first flight, somewhere in the Caribbean, a Merlin engine was still rolling down a runway in service. Today, roughly 150 restored Mustangs fly in private hands. You can hear them at air shows on summer weekends. A Merlin at full throttle sounds like nothing else humans have invented. Like thunder you can stand under. They built the airplane. They flew it, they came home, and when they could not come home, they died on duty, quietly, without ceremony. That is the ending the men who lived it would have wanted. That is the only one this story needs.